Before we dive in, I want to take a quick look at what's going on right now and what's coming up next. We're working on wrapping up the Building a Blog series that you're watching right now, and we're also rolling out some new episodes about scraping the web with Ruby. Up next, we're going to take a deep dive into working with APIs, and we're also going to start publishing some content to help you start making some money freelancing. If you're interested in that, you need to head over to techmaker.tv and sign up, because that will not be available on YouTube. Let's get started with the episode. In part 7 of this series, we're going to add publishing and unpublishing to our blog posts, as well as pagination. The publishing functionality will allow us to create blog posts and edit them and work on them over time without people being able to see them as soon as they're created. To get started, let's jump over to our terminal, and we're going to add a migration to our application. And basically what that means is we're going to give our app some instructions so that it knows how to update the database. So we're going to say railsg migration, and we're going to call it add published to posts, and we're going to give it 2 fields, one called published, which is a Boolean, and then another one called published at, which is a datetime. Now, the only really important piece of this is, first of all, the 3 first things, railsg migration. In the title, what matters is the last word, posts, and then this is just telling it which columns to modify. So we'll run this, and then we'll take a look at the file that gets created. So if we look in db migrate, you can see that this says it creates a file with a class in here like we titled it, and because of the word post being at the end of the title, it adds a column to the post table, and then it generates the 2 columns that we wanted. The only thing I'm going to add in here is default false, and that's it. And then we'll go back and we'll run rails db migrate. So before we keep going, there's one helpful thing that I want to add. That is a gem that's going to help us know, it's going to help us keep track of what all attributes we've added to our database. So it's called annotate. You can save this. I just got this new theme, and it's a little weird for me, so I want to view word wrap. Just scrolling throws me off. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So I had gem annotate, and we're going to go back to our terminal, run bundle. Back in my browser, so this is the page for this gem, and you can read up on it here. I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to run it in my terminal. I just want to annotate the models and nothing else. So now let's go look at what that did. So we don't actually have a lot of models. I guess we only have a couple. But this will tell us now at the top of the file all the different things that we've added. Same thing with author. So if we jump back over to the browser and we look at our landing page for the Frog blog, right now I've got 1 post created with my author, and there's no notion of whether or not it's published. It's just as soon as I create a post and I save it, it just shows up first thing, and that's not what we want. So back in the code, I'm going to open up the post model. When I created this published Boolean, we gave it a default of false. So what I can do is create another scope down here, and I'm just going to call it published, and I'm going to say where published is true. And it's really simple. and it's just going to return back all of the blog posts that have been published. So then in my posts controller, and you want to be careful, you don't want the author's post controller, you want the blog post controller. So we're going to say post.mostrecent.published. And so basically something that's haven't really talked about is these scopes are chainable. So when you create these, it's going to return back a collection of posts, and you can like continue to chain these scopes together so that you can get things like post.mostrecent.published. Okay, so if we refresh, now these disappear. So we're going to create a button in this this page that just says publish or unpublish depending on whatever the current status is. So the first thing that we need to do is set up routes. So if you look in the routes file, I'm going to set up a quick demo so we can see how something works. So first thing, just what I'm going to do, I want to add some controller actions to the author's post controller. And so I'm going to create some routes that are going to point there. And they're going to be put because we're trying to update. That corresponds to the get, post, put, delete stuff for different types of actions we might want to take. I'm not really going to get deep into that right now, but you can look it up. Anyway, so we want to put publish, and I'm going to point it at post publish. And I'm going to just go save that and then go back to the terminal. I'm going to stop my server, and I'm going to run Rails routes. And this is going to tell me all the different routes and what they point at. And I'm going to show you a trick. You can pipe together another command, grep publish, and this is going to give us just the word, or the ones with the word publish in it. And it's actually not that readable like that, but you can see we have it here. So it gives us this author's post publish path, and we're putting to author's post ID publish. So I'm going to create one more, and it's going to be unpublish, and we'll do the same thing. And now we get our two routes, author's post publish and author's post unpublish. So now we want to set up controller actions to map to those. So we've already got this open here. By the way, in case you are lost on this routes file, it's in the config file, or config folder down here. Anyway, so what we want to do is we want to open up, oh, this is the wrong post controller. We want to open up the author post controller. And in here, we're going to add two new actions, publish, unpublish. So before we keep going, let's jump over to the Rails console. And I'm going to show you basically what we're going to do in the controller. So if you're on Rails C, now we can call post.first, and it's going to give us the first post that was created. So we'll say post equals underscore, and I'll set it equal to that one. And then we can say post.update published true. And then if I open a new tab and I run my server, and I jump back to the browser, now that post shows up because it's published. So let me jump back over here. I can say that's false, and if I refresh, then it's gone. So basically what we're going to do is copy that behavior into our controller actions. So let's jump back to the code. And so if you remember, we have this set post method that gets called before we run certain controller actions. So what we want to do is add our new actions to this. So we're going to call, or say, publish and unpublish. So that's going to give us a post. So then all we need to do down here is exactly what we typed into the terminal. So we'll say at post.update published true. And then here we'll do this false. Now we know that these buttons are going to be on the author posts page. So what we want to do is redirect to this author's post URL. And we're going to be taking advantage of turbo links here quite a bit because it's really going to look like nothing's happening except for the button is changing. And that's got to do with the way that turbo links works. In older versions of Rails or in other frameworks, you would probably do this with Ajax, and really you might even do it in Rails 5, but I don't see the big advantage right now, so I'm just not going to worry about it. So finally, we need to add buttons in the views. So in our authors posts index is where we're going to be, and we're rendering posts, so I need this post here, and I'm going to add another CD right there. And actually we need to say if at, or if post, we don't need the at, dot published else and if it's published, we want to give the ability to unpublish it. And if it's not published, we want to give the ability to publish it. And this is going to be authors post publish. I think maybe it was authors unpublish post path, and this was authors publish post path. That's a tongue twister. So let's jump back to the terminal and verify this really fast. So we're going to do Rails routes grep post, or publish rather. And it's authors post publish. So I got that backwards. So we'll fix that. And then let's go back and check out what we have in our my posts. So a couple of things. I need to fix the table in the index. Say call span is 5. And I don't want that to be, let's do, I don't want a BTN warning here. Let's make that one, let's do success and primary. I would do this a lot differently in a real app, but for now this should be fine. So now, if I publish, no route matches get, what is happening here? Okay, so there's a couple of things that I need to fix. First of all, these things need to be method put, because by default link to is a get. Okay, so there's also something we need to fix in routes. This should say on member. And actually, let me show you what happens if we don't have that. I'll show you the difference here. So if I save that and then I jump back here and I do Rails routes grep publish. So you can see that's what's happening is we have this post ID here. And if I add my on member stuff, it changes this to ID. Now this is just some behavior that you need to know about Rails to figure this kind of thing out. But at any rate, one of the problems was that whenever we were coming through, we had a post ID here, and in order to find it, we also we need an ID. So that's why we need that onMember thing. Anyway, let's give this a shot now. So now we've changed the method to put, and we've configured it so that it has an ID instead of a post ID. And let's see what happens. Oh, I need to start my server. My post doesn't like something. So let's try this. Let's say as publish and then as unpublish. Let's jump back to our routes or our terminal and check our routes out. So let's say Rails routes grep publish authors post path, unpublish authors post path. So that's rearranging some stuff a little bit, so we need to fix that. So it's unpublish authors post path now, and publish authors post path. Okay, let's see if this is still blowing up. Need to start the server again. Okay, so now it works. So if I publish this and I go to my blog, okay. If I unpublish this one and I publish this one and I go to the blog, sweet. So I think like this post is kind of done, so we'll publish it. And then test is obviously something that we just started, so we don't want it published. So this is kind of the right setup. So I just realized looking back through that the as publish and as unpublish has no effect. So let's take that out because we don't need it, and that's going to confuse us. I think the onMember is what's actually creating that named route for us, potentially. At any rate, it still works. So if you remember, there's actually one more thing we need to do with this. We have this published at datetime that right now we're not doing anything with. So when we originally set this up, I intentionally threw a couple of things in here because I knew that this would come up. So this is meant to be published at, and this is meant to be published at. Because if you think about it, we want the most recently published, not something that's ordered based on a database. But this is going to probably cause problems. Yeah, because we can't stringify nil, so on and so forth. So what we need to do is in our post controller, when we update published, we want to also say published at to be just time.now. And then we also want to do the same thing for unpublished, and we're just going to make it nil. And let's go back. So we'll unpublish everything, and then we'll publish it again. And then we'll go to the blog. Now it shows up, and it's saying it's published October 17th. Cool. So it should be the same thing here. And it's sorting it and saying that this one on the left is the most recent because it's the one that we published latest. And we can try this again and do it the other way. So if I publish test, and then I publish leggings once, or normcore, whatever, it puts that one on the left. but let's unpublish test. So I'm going to do one more thing just to kind of wrap this up. First of all, we should be able to do this. Put that inline there, and then put this one inline here. Let's try that out. So if I refresh this, and then I unpublish, publish, yeah, it's working just fine. You know, that might not need to be sorted the same way as the landing page. At any rate, so that's what we want. And then I actually want to refactor this a tiny bit because, you know, this is some logic we're calling on the post, and what I would like to just do is be able to say post.publish. And I can do that if I go back to the post model, publish, and just call that like that. And then I can do the same thing for unpublish. Okay, let's try this out. Works just fine. Cool. The benefit of doing what we just did is sort of a stylistic thing in Rails. You typically want to keep your controller as short as possible. I really like how readable this is. We're just telling the post to publish itself. And you know, if we wanted more complicated publish or unpublished logic in the future, we have one single place to do it, and so on and so forth. But anyway, and that gets into a whole deeper conversation, and people get into all sorts of different opinions. But I kind of like this. It's short and simple right now. And anyway, that is all the time I've got today. So I'm going to have to go ahead and wrap this up. Next time we'll get into pagination. There's probably going to be 2 or 3 more episodes in this. I've been sketching out some stuff and got quite a bit more that I want to add. Who knows? We'll just keep it going as long as it feels good. Anyway, if you like this, click the like, click the subscribe, and stay tuned, and I'll talk to you soon.